I'd like to talk to you about winning. I love to win, and I think probably most people like to win in life, in competition, in anything, because the alternative, losing, isn't so much fun. Here's the deal, though. I think most people have the concept of winning a little messed up, and that's what I want to share with you today. My philosophy, my definition of winning, and perhaps it's one that you might decide to adopt after you hear what I have to offer. I developed this process for winning 100% of the time while I was doing a triathlon. And the process I'm going to share with you today works so well that I've used it in so many areas of my life, and I think it'll work really well for you too. Here's how it started. A couple of years ago, I was doing a IronMind triathlon, one that I had done several years prior, and I'd achieved a 13 and a half hour time period. For those of you who don't know what an Ironman triathlon is, it's a really long race. It's three sports. It's swimming, biking, and running. You start off with a 2.4 mile swim, and usually it's in open water. It's a lake or an ocean. And then when you're done with that, you do a 112 mile bike ride. And then when you're done with that bike ride, you put on your running shoes and you run a marathon. It is a really long day. It's a very, very challenging race. It's one that very few people do, but those that have accomplished it and those that have completed it have gained so many things in their life. And one of the things that I gained was this process and this idea and concept of how to win 100% of the time. So here's what happened. A couple of years ago, as I said, I was redoing this race. I was running the same course that I had run several years prior. I received a 13 and a half hour time period, and I worked for 2 years to beat this 13 and a half hour time period. 2 years. Now, for those of you who don't know, that the training for an Ironman is pretty intensive. It's 20 to 24 hours a week. So I had trained for 2 years. I'd worked for 2 years to beat my time. And I was pretty much on target to beat it by almost 40 minutes. I mean, an incredible amount of time. And I'd worked really hard. That particular day, I completed the swim, and I found myself at mile 81 of the bike ride. And I was pulling into an aid station. Now, an aid station is pretty much what you'd expect it to be. It's a place to get some aid, a place to get some water, maybe some electrolytes, a snack, get back on your bike, and keep going. The problem was it was a very challenging day. It was 108 degrees, and the race organizers, I don't believe, had anticipated the effects that the heat would have on the racers and also their planning. I got to that aid station and I saw people all over the place, lying on the ground, sitting on the ground. Some people were crying, some people were moaning, some people just had a dejected look on their face. And I saw the bicycles racked up, row after bicycles. And I realized that these people were out of the race. They'd given up. They weren't going on for whatever reason. I didn't know what the reason was at the time. I just knew that I had to stay in the race. And I was experiencing some issues with dehydration. I had no more water on my bike. I was thirsty. My hands were starting to claw up, which is one of the signs of electrolyte imbalance. So I was becoming dehydrated, and I was at this aid station, and I needed to get some water in me, some liquids in me fast. But here's the problem. As I said earlier, the race organizers had underestimated the effects of the heat, the 108 degree heat on the racers and on their supplies, and there was no water left. There was no liquids left whatsoever at that aid station. And I knew then that's why all those people had given up. They were just like I was. They needed something to keep going, and there was nothing there. And they decided they were going to quit. Well, I don't give up quite so easily, and so I had to find a way to stay in the race. And that's really the first step. That's the first step to being a 100% winner, is that you've decided that you're going to win no matter what. Now, remember, I'm going to talk about what the definition of winning is later on, at least my definition of winning. I had already declared myself a winner. That's step number one. And winners don't quit. So I had to find a way to stay in the race. I looked around the aid station everywhere I could find. I was just looking for something I could consume. And I saw it. I saw this little blue kiddie pool, this wading pool. You know, the kind that maybe your mother put you in when you were a little kid and you'd splash around. And it wasn't very deep, but it was safe. And it was a great way to play and to cool off on a hot, sunny day. Well, this was a hot, sunny day. And I went over to the kiddie pool and I looked down in it. And I realized that earlier that day, probably it had been filled with ice and water bottles. Now, I knew there were water bottles in it because there were labels from the water bottles floating all over this water. There was no more ice, but there was water and water bottles, and the wind had blown in some grass and some leaves, and there were bugs in there. And the water wasn't really very clear. It was kind of a dingy brown. I suspect somebody might have washed their feet off in it. And, you know, if you think about people that are hot, one of the ways to cool off is to take your shoes off and put your feet in the water. So I think that's what probably happened. And that was the only thing that was there. There was no water bottles, there was no Gatorade, there was none of the things that you would expect to find at an aid station. I bet you can probably guess what I decided to do. Yep. I leaned down, I got down on my knee, and I pushed aside the grass and the leaves and the bugs. I scooped up a handful of that dingy brown, warm water, and I put it to my lips and I drank. And I continued to drink and rest and drink and rest. And eventually, what I figure must have been about 10 minutes, I felt well enough to get back in the race. And that's what I did. I got back on my bike at mile 81 and I got back in the race because I declared myself a winner, the first step to winning. Now, when I got to the end of the 112 miles, and I was so thankful to get off that bike because I knew there was going to be water at the other end, I got ready to hand my bike off to, or let go of the bike handles and handed it off to the volunteer. And as soon as I did that, oh, it was like a lightning bolt. It was like an electrical lightning bolt shooting through my back. I had the most severe back pain that I'd experienced in a long time. And the pain shot down both of my legs and into my feet. Somehow I managed to twist my back on that bike ride, and it probably happened anywhere in the beginning of the day. It might even happen on the swim. But by the time I got off the bike, I was doubled over. I could not stand up straight. I could barely walk. My dreams of beating that 13 and a half hour time period, I think, were shot because I had to run a marathon and I could barely walk. But remember, I declared myself a winner, right? The first step to winning 100% of the time. So I wasn't going to give up that easy. I was not going to kiss off 2 years of training. But how could I go on? How could I win when I could barely walk? Well, that's, my friends, is where step number 2 comes in, because I had to look for the positive in the situation. And there's always a positive whenever things go wrong. Sometimes you have to look a little bit harder than others. But you and I both know that balance in life means good and bad. It means positive and negative. It means there is always something good that you can find if you look hard enough. And that's what I did. I had to get my mind wrapped around where my body was. I had to get my mind in the spot where I was going to be able to move forward. And so here's what I did. I told myself this. Here's the positive. I said, you've already gone 115 miles. You only have 26 more to go. You've got 26 more miles to run. You've come all this way. You're almost done. Now, I know for some of you that may sound a little crazy. For the triathletes, probably not, but you get the point. Life doesn't go the way we expect it to go a lot of the time. Sometimes for us people, it seems like most of the time it doesn't go that way. But you have to find a way to push forward. And so that was the positive spin I put on things. And part of that was also coming up with a new, sort of a new goal. because I wasn't going to beat my 13.5-hour time period that I'd worked for 2 years to beat. So I set my new goal here. My new goal was, you're just going to finish this race. No matter what, you're going to finish this race. Now, all sounds wonderful, right? Positive thinking, all of that kind of stuff. And you and I both know that's not enough to succeed, right? I can declare myself a winner. I can have a positive mindset. I can set a new goal. But the strategies that I had to get there, well, they're out the window. I got to come up with a new strategy. And here's what I did. I knew that I had 17 hours to finish the race. I knew that I had 6 hours left in the race to run the marathon. Now, if you're a marathon runner, you know that's a pretty long time. But if you can't walk, maybe it isn't so long. Here's what I did. I figured that if I could, I did a little algebra, which is not the easiest thing for me, but one of those formulas, one of those story problems. You know, if you've got 26 miles to go and you've got 6 hours to do it in, you know, X and Y and Z, and you're figuring out the unknown, which was, how fast do I need to run? Well, in my case, it wasn't running. It was a fast walk. And I figured if I could do a little under a 15-minute mile fast walk, I could finish the race. And so that's what I did. I set off to do a little under 15 minutes so that I could finish in 6 hours. I have to tell you, it was the most painful fast walk I have ever done. Literally, I had tears rolling down my cheeks. And people were asking me, are you okay? I wasn't okay, but I wasn't going to tell them that. I just smiled and I kept going. And here's where step number 4 comes in. Step number 4 is really, really important. It is the thing that when life just kicks you and knocks you down, it is the thing that will keep you in the game, that will keep you going, that will keep you in the race. I could not be a winner if I didn't finish. Finishers are winners. Finishers are winners. And that's what I kept telling myself. Every time I wanted to quit, which was like almost every 2 minutes, I kept telling myself, finishers are winners. Finishers are winners. And I said that to myself for the entire 26 miles until I crossed that finish line. Now, I considered myself a winner because even though life got in the way and things didn't go the way I expected them to go, I didn't give up. I set a new goal. I set a new strategy. I pushed forward. I used the 4-step process. The 4-step process. Declare yourself a winner. Number 2, come up with the positive when things don't go your way and set a new goal. Number 3, set a new strategy. And number 4, finish what you start. Always finish what you start. University of Scranton did a study a few years ago that found that 92% of the people who set goals do not accomplish them. 92% of the people who set goals don't accomplish them. They don't finish. Think about this. If you could finish what you started, you'd be in the top 10% of anything that you do. Finishing is so important. Quitting seems so easy. It seems like the most logical choice. Finishing when things go wrong sometimes is the toughest thing to do. But you'll be happy if you do it. Now, here's my concept of winning. A lot of people think that if you don't get first place, you didn't win. Or maybe it's second or third place. You didn't win. If that's the case, there's a few winners and a whole lot of losers in the world. And again, I don't like to lose, and I don't suspect any of you do either. The great thing about IronMind Triathlon is that the first, second, and third place person and the last person, that person that crosses the finish line at 16 hours and 59 minutes and 59 seconds, they all get the same thing. They all get a medal. It says it's a finisher medal. And the coolest thing I love about this is this medal is a ribbon attached to it. And it says finisher. Finishers truly are winners. They really are. Go ahead and try this 4-step process. I think you're going to find that it works very well for anything in your life, in your business or in your personal life. Now, if you're in sales, like I am, or you own your own business and you sell a product or a service to customers, you know that this is all about getting yeses and also getting no's. I've taken the same four-step principle and applied it to the sales process. I've actually devised a way that you can win 100% of the time in sales, even when the prospect says no. How'd you like to win? Even when the prospect says no. Even when somebody tells you, I don't want to buy what you have to offer. How'd you like to win? So for those of you, this isn't for everybody, but for those of you who are in sales or have a business that want to be able to get access to that, send me an email or message me and tell me that you want my process. I will give it to anybody who wants it for free. I so much want to give back to people that are in my profession, and this formula works so well that I'm excited about it, and I'm excited for you to try it out as well. So go ahead, try the four-step process, try it out in your life, try it out in your business, and remember, finishers are winners.